Welcome to this week's episode of the Sports Curious podcast. I'm your host, Amy Butch Siegfried, and I am joined today by our legendary expert on all things sports, Scott. Scott, welcome to the podcast.
It's an honor and a pleasure to be here today. And I think we're going to talk about the most intrusive job interview you could possibly have.
Yes, the NFL Combine, also known as the Underwear Olympics, is probably one of the most interesting. I think this is such an interesting topic every year that when it comes up because it's really kind of asinine, really. There's a lot of things they do that obviously make sense, and they're investing a lot of money in these athletes, but some of the things they do are kinda crazy.
If you put it into, a different job field, if we were asking accountants to bench press and run 40 yards in their underwear and stand shirtless in front of scouts, it would be considered probably illegal.
It would probably be an HR issue. I'm
Yeah.
not in HR, but I've known a few HR people. I think this would be an issue.
Yes. So we'll put it in that perspective, but it is football, so it doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense, but it makes money.
Yes, it does.
So tell us a little bit about the NFL Combine and what it is.
So the NFL Combine, they invite approximately 300 of the top draft eligible prospects all to come to Indianapolis. That's where all the teams, their executives, their coaches all converge on Indy for this weekend, which kind of fills the void of football after the Super Bowl. And they run them through physical tests, mental tests, interviews, everything. And that's kind of how they get their draft boards set for the draft.
Has anyone ever gone high in the draft that has not attended the Combine? Like, this is kind of a must attend, I'm guessing.
You don't have to attend all the events, so a lot of guys will only do certain things, but everyone does show up, yes. So
Okay.
a lot of top prospects won't do some of the drills that they don't seem necessary for them.
Like passing
But
drills or something like that?
yeah, but they'll show up and they'll do interviews with the teams and go through physicals and drug tests and things like that.
So you said this is 300-ish prospects. How are those prospects selected? Are those based on the NFL? Do teams submit them? Do you have any idea how that works?
To the best of my knowledge, it's just the NFL projecting who some of the top guys are going to be, or a lot of the top guys with over 300 guys there. But if you aren't invited, there's still certainly a possibility to get drafted.
You see a lot of guys doing kind of their own side things, if I remember correctly, like doing their own little NFL scouting type of event.
Yes, and most schools will have a prospect day where they have all the executives, coaches, and scouts come to their individual schools and
Okay.
evaluate all the closer to the draft. Usually they'll come and evaluate all the talent there. So this is important, but there's also, those days at the big schools.
There's other opportunities. Makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yes.
So we've already kind of talked about the combine has these very interesting, very unique elements to it. It's called the Underwear Olympics. I mean, it kind of it stems off of the fact that they used to have this sort of eyeball test. And if you've seen the picture of Tom Brady when he went through the combine, he is this tall, skinny guy in a pair of boxer shorts with his name on an easel next to him, and he does not look like the Tom Brady we know now. But that's essentially where the Underwear Olympics come from, because you'll see these guys out there running the 40 or doing their different drills, and they are literally in an athletic version of a Speedo.
Yep. And if that Tom Brady picture could talk to the Tom Brady now, I'm sure things would be very different. But yeah, that's one of the most famous pictures of all time, unfortunately for Tom. I know we asked Elon to scrub it from X or Twitter, but I don't think that ever happened.
No, you can't that the really interesting thing about that is you would should I in my opinion, be
Mhm.
proud of that, right? It's like,
Yeah.
"Hey, look where I started." It's like Drake's song, "Started from the bottom, now I'm here." Like, this
Yes.
little skinny guy, with bad posture and in his boxer shorts is one of the best athletes ever, but definitely one of the best football players ever.
Absolutely. And a legendarily slow 40-yard dash as well.
Does he still have he doesn't probably doesn't have the slowest, but he probably is darn close.
He's very close for quarterbacks. There's a few that rival him.
I mean, I'm not judging because guess what? My 40-yard dash time, also horrible.
Yeah, I don't know that mine would be that great either. So
I mean, all
we're not.
fairness, I don't think I've
That's
ever done a
not.
40-yard dash. Have you?
I
You play
have.
football. Okay.
Yeah, I play football. It's quite possibly the most ridiculous thing that really makes no sense and doesn't translate to the game at all.
Oh, I mean, there we go. Are you
How
listening, GMs?
how many linemen do you know that run 40 yards?
None, unless they really have to. Maybe once a
Yeah,
season if there's an emergency.
hmm exactly. So it's kind of a
You make a val
silly drill.
you make a valid point.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things they do too is these guys not only go through physical things, they go through um, mental challenges, especially interviews that they're sort of interrogation style questions that attempt to evoke players' vices like drinking or drugs, their ethics, their failures, sexual orientation, really anything they can do to get a rise out of a player. And I'm not sure how legal this is on some of them. I've never been in an interview myself, but it's definitely you've got to be prepared and be on your A game on all facets.
Yes, and a lot of these guys are doing like interview after interview after interview on particular days, so they may be 12 hours worth of interviews
Oh my gosh.
going from team to team, which mentally I don't know that I can handle, especially being interrogated some of the ways that they are. And I know there's been rules set in place more recently to try to prevent inappropriate questions that have been asked in the past. So I can only imagine after 10 or 11 hours of answering nonstop questions what it's like.
My gosh, you're exhausted.
I mean, being asked dog or cat, that's pretty tough after 12 hours.
What kind of cat would you be if you were a cat?
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know that I would have an answer for them.
No, you'd be taking a lot of like supplements or whatever it is to get your brain going.
Not too many supplements. We don't want to
Just
fail
the
the
right kind. I meant like, like a
test.
drinkable brain thing or something.
Yeah, we don't want to fail the drug test. So got to be
So
careful.
we've talked about athleticism. We've talked about the mental side and your ability to maintain that. But then they're going to come in and critique you on your size. And one of the big conversations in the combine is hand size. And this is this is publicizing how big your hands are, all these things. And I think who I notably I remember Kyler Murray who had a small hand, and that was like people were freaking out about that. He's not tall in stature,
No,
and his hands are small, which means he probably like can't handle the football as well, right? And so at that point, there was not an NFL quarterback that had a smaller hand than a 9-inch hand. That's your span from your thumb to your pinky.
Mhm.
And obviously, he's still around, kind of. He's been injured, but we have a rumor of some big hands coming this combine, I guess.
we do. And one of the more famous, other than Kyler, was Joe Burrow. His hand size
Mhm.
was considered small, and I think he may have tweeted out that he had was considering retiring from playing football because of his small hand size. If you remember that, and
Yes,
Joe's done pretty okay for himself, so I think yeah, it's not necessarily the best way to
the
judge some
end all.
quarterback skills. Yes, but
So,
we do have,
Michael,
like you said,
go
we
ahead.
do have some big hands coming in this year for quarterbacks. Everyone's kind of raving about Michael Penix Jr. from Washington, who led them to the national championship, having 10.5-inch hands, which is
I
considered
wish I brought
massive.
a I wish I
Yeah,
brought a ruler with me.
it's a
What's
very
it
large
about
hand size.
that?
Easy to grip the football.
Imagine that's basically an entire ruler.
Yeah, so his ability to grip a football in bad weather would be considered strong.
I mean, that makes sense.
And yeah,
What
unfortunately, he doesn't have the largest hand size. The largest is 11.75 inches, which that's insane.
that basically is a ruler. That is a ruler.
Yes, and none of those are quarterbacks either.
That's crazy. Yeah, the
Yeah,
guys who don't even really need to handle the ball.
no.
But
So
imagine being blocked by one of them. It's like being hit by a whole piece of paper.
yes, trying to throw the ball over that hand
Yep.
is very tough.
Good point. I didn't think about that part,
Yeah.
blocking kicks, etc. So obviously size matter. Maybe it doesn't matter, but size is judged when it comes to the combine. Now, they
Mhm.
used to run this test called the Wonderlic Test, and this was an IQ test. And there are great players who have scored poorly. Were great players who have scored really well. They no longer do the Wonderlic Test. I'm sure they probably factor a lot of these questions into their Q and A's that they do. But tell me a little bit more about the Wonderlic Test.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Wonderlic test has been discontinued. Like you said, it was kind of determined to be irrelevant, and people thought it might be attacking certain stereotypes and backgrounds with the test. So they've done away with it. But what was it? 50 questions in 12 minutes, I think,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not mistaken. And like you said, there's been some guys who've scored really high. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's a quarterback. He's now on Amazon Prime Thursday nights. Harvard guy, which he'll tell you. I think he might have the highest score ever. Don't quote me on that, but I believe he's got the highest.
I mean, if you're Harvard educated, it seems like a logical
Yeah,
option.
and he'll tell you he's from Harvard too. Um, so if you will, if you have a moment, I'll throw a question at you to kind of see
Let's do it.
what these players were facing in this 15
I'm going to
minutes.
embarrass myself.
Yeah, here we go.
School.
There will be math. The
Oh, great.
bills
As I wear my NBA shirt, even better. Better. Judge me now.
the bill is $14.23, and you pay with a $20 bill. How much should you get back in change? $4.16, $2.50, $6.43.
Well, sorry, it's hard to tell without seeing these. What were my options again? It's not $2. What was the other one?
Oh, I think there's one more, or 577. Sorry, I left off an answer.
577 is the right. 577 is the right answer.
Final answer.
Yes.
There we go.
Yes.
So that's kind of what they were dealing with in a short amount of time that has nothing to do with football. So that's probably
Yeah.
why it's not
Interesting.
necessarily a factor anymore.
I'm surprised it's not something like, okay, for a quarterback, can you repeat these 15 words back?
Mhm.
Because if you remember when we did the podcast about play calling, those plays they call are a mile long. So something like that would be, to me, much more useful of, can you remember these 15 words in sequence? Then can you make change out of a 20?
Yeah, and that's something they'll do with in team interviews in that process, I assume. More of
Interesting.
remembering plays and drawing out plays and making them remember which play and draw it back. So things like that
Mm-hmm.
would be the
Got
team
it.
interviews. Yeah,
It makes sense.
yeah.
So who should we be watching this year?
This year it's going to be a lot of quarterbacks. A lot of quarterbacks, maybe some wide receivers. Uh, Top pick, kind of across the board. Caleb Williams coming out of USC, Heisman Trophy winner. He's kind of the number one pick.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, I doubt he will do any type of athletic testing. He'll
Really?
probably
Okay.
just do there's no point for him to run the 40 or throw.
People
And
already know
he'll
what they're
probably,
getting.
probably just do the interviews.
Okay. And he's entering the draft, which I think
Mhm.
this isn't really very common with no agent.
So yeah, he's coming into the NFL with no agent, which is kind of unprecedented. But in the NFL, the way the draft picks work, I mean, everyone's assuming he's going number one, and all the pay slots are slotted already. So he already knows he's going to get X amount as the number one pick. Number two knows what they're going to get. So there's really
Oh,
not,
there's a defined pay slot.
yes. So there's really not
Interesting.
that much negotiation, just how much guaranteed money is on the table. So that's really the only thing that he's going to have to negotiate.
So it was interesting. I was reading about this because I thought this is weird. I've never seen anybody doing this before. And one of the biggest challenges of this is, yes, obviously in negotiation, and there's some
Mhm.
players like Lamar Jackson who represented themselves and probably are not getting paid to this day what they're worth because of that. But they were saying how one of the biggest challenges is you're going to have other agents who are going out and saying, "Hey, you know what? My guy Jaden Daniels is better than your guy, better
Hmm.
than Caleb Williams. I'll tell you why." And they'll start spreading rumors. And without a agent in there, you have no one to stand up for you. And so I
Yes.
thought that was a really interesting perspective too, the trash talking that goes on in order to elevate your person higher in the picks.
Hmm. It's referred to as smokescreen season between the combine and the draft, where other agents, even teams, will spread rumors, hoping that if they tarnish this guy's reputation, maybe they'll fall to their draft pick. If someone has number 4,
It's so interesting.
they'll trash the guy who might go number 3, hoping that they can get him to drop. So there's a lot of behind the scenes politics and things like that agents can handle. But in the case of Caleb, I think he's going number 1, so it doesn't really necessarily matter for him.
Understood, but yeah, like you said, that guaranteed money is a
Yeah.
huge piece of that because for those of you who don't know, guaranteed money is if something happens to him, he's still going to get X amount of dollars. So
Yeah.
should he get injured in his first season, this guaranteed money is huge, especially as a young player and you may not do well. The transition from college to the NFL is significant. I learned this from our play calling episode, and if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to it because Scott, it was like it was my favorite episode thus far because they're now play calling. In college, you're not calling plays. The coaches are doing it. Now you're calling plays as an NFL quarterback, and quarterbacks don't always transition well from
Mhm.
between those two types of offenses.
It's a huge jump. So guaranteed money, which in the NFL isn't prevalent in the most, physically demanding sport. So to get the guaranteed money is huge. And that's where an agent can really help you. But I mean, I guess he's good. Good to go.
Yeah, I guess so. So we have Drake May from North Carolina is up there, Jaden Daniels from LSU, Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State, Michael Penix Jr. from Washington. They're all up there as quarterbacks. And Deion Sanders' boys are not eligible for this year's draft yet, are they? Or haven't declared?
They're staying in school for one more year.
Okay.
So I think it's smart on their part. Shador would probably be. There's a lot of quarterbacks in this draft that
Mhm.
are very highly rated, and it kind of seems like next year Shador might be the number 1 quarterback already coming out. So him to go back to school another year, get some better film, game tape, and he's making NIL money, so it's really not that big of a deal. But
True.
I think it's smart for him to go back and come out next year because, like you said, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Heisman Trophy winner Jaden Daniels. There's a lot of guys in this year's draft.
Absolutely. Now, as we get ready to wrap this up, is there anything you wanna leave us with?
Oh, there's so many things. Can we talk about
Give us
the 40-yard dash and some of the ridiculous things that have been
please.
offered? I know we kind of mentioned the 40-yard dash previously, how kind of irrelevant it is for most guys, but in the past, there's been people put up prizes and awards for breaking the record of the 40-yard dash. Like, I think 2017, Adidas offered anybody who was wearing their cleats that set the record a private island, which is,
Imagine being the insurance guy on that, putting that policy together.
pretty awesome prize. And somebody actually did break the record that year, John Ross, but he did not get the private island because he was wearing Nikes, not Adidas.
Nike was never so happy.
Yeah, so that was the only year it was offered. I don't know what's going on in that island now.
What was his record? 4 seconds and 22 4 minutes 4 seconds, 4.22 seconds, sorry.
4.22 seconds, yes.
Well,
Which
is that
is,
still does that record still hold?
to the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay. Well, he coulda had a private island.
Somebody, I don't know what they did with it. Somebody's got one.
So, well, they probably had to go find it.
Hmm.
So, well, thanks for sharing us
And
with
can we do
us.
one
Yeah,
more?
one more?
One more real
Yes.
quick. The combine's been in Indianapolis since 1987, and the NFL, always wanting to make money, has been looking to move it around to different cities,
Kinda like
but
they do the draft, right?
like they've done with the draft, just because it's a traveling circus basically, and they want to make more
Mhm.
money. But thankfully for Indy, it's set for to stay until at least 2025.
Okay.
So at least
So
that's sacred. And St. Elmo's is happy that the draft is staying, or the combine.
it's St. Elmo's, and their really hot cocktail sauce.
Yes. So they'll be happy for another year. They'll be happy for another year.
There you go. Well, thanks for sharing with us. For you, if you want to watch it, the combine starts February 29th, runs through March 3rd, and all different position players they sprinkle in through those days. So if you want to catch it, I'm sure you can catch it on the NFL Network and online. So thanks for joining us today, Scott. I appreciate sharing your knowledge.
Thank you for having me. Enjoy the combine.
Thanks.